Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Andrew Muff, and I'll be your host for today's Cask webinar. Cask is a leading open-source big data software company based in Palo Alto, California. Its flagship offering, the Cask Data Application Platform, or CDAP, makes it possible for developers and organizations to easily build, integrate, and deploy powerful applications on Hadoop and Spark. Today's webinar is titled, What's New in CDAP 4? And is presented by Nitin Motgi. Nitin is a founder and CTO of Cask, where he is responsible for developing the company's long-term technology vision, driving company engineering initiatives, and collaboration. Prior to Cask, Nitin was at Yahoo working on a large-scale content optimization system externally known as Core. One thing before we get started, we plan to have 10 to 15 minutes for questions at the end of this presentation. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel. With that, let's get started. Nitin, over to you.
Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate the introduction. It's great to be speaking with you all today. So for the benefit of the people who are new to CDAP, I will be providing a very high-level overview, and then we'll jump right into the features and capabilities of CDAP. Let's get started. So CDAP, Cask Data Application Platform, it's the first unified integration platform for big data, and it's a platform for building distributed apps and bringing all your application management combined with data integration together. It's 100% open source, and it's built for scalability. And it supports all of the major distributions and public clouds. Essentially, you can have Cloudera, MapR, HDP, and also be able to run on Azure, IBM, Google Compute, and such. It integrates with the latest open source technologies. To give you guys a little bit of idea of where this CDAP fits in the overall picture, CDAP is a platform that sits on top of your Hadoop. It can coexist with your existing setup. It's not necessarily you have to operate only through CDAP if CDAP has been installed. Hydrator and Tracker, which are essentially the extensions of CDAP, built using CDAP APIs, and they run within CDAP. So CDAP essentially is a middleware and an integration layer which provides abstractions for building data applications and enabling all of your data lakes. So with this small introduction, let's jump into the features and capabilities of CDAP. So the first things first. So CDAP 4 release is currently planned to be in Q4 of 2016. This is a major release. And as you guys all know, we do one major release a year, and at minimum, we do 4 minor releases. So with that, let's get into the features. So we have broadly classified these features into user experience, infrastructure, self-service, data management, security, and we'll talk about different distributions and clouds and integrations. So let's get started. So let's start with first user experience features. CDAP UI, which is the core part of the platform, had outlived its time. In this release, we are making major modifications to the CDAP UI. One of the major decisions that we had to do, make actually in this release, was to move to a different UI framework. So we decided after a lot of experimentation, we decided to move to React. Now, all of the individual applications that are part of the UI framework, CDAP, Hydrator, and Tracker, have been separated out. This is to have separate release cycles for each one of these, so that moving forward, post CDAP 4, we'll be able to release them independently, and they don't need to be tied to an individual CDAP release. And the main purpose for moving to React from an Angular framework was we saw significant performance improvement because of optimized DOM updates that React provides. And it also makes it easy from a building and management perspective. It provides consistency and it basically improves consistency and usability across all of the UI components. So The next major thing, as we have seen with our users, the ability to navigate seamlessly between extensions, namespaces, and entities greatly enhance their learnability and their productivity. So with CDAP 4, we provide a consistent global navigation controls, intuitive navigations to extensions and namespaces. And what we have done in this release is now we support multi-language, so you can configure the UI to support different languages if need be, and you can also white label it by configuring logos and the color schemes. So one of the major changes that has been introduced in this CDAP 4 release is what we call the plus button. Plus button provides global access to add pre-built use cases, applications, pipelines, or artifacts to your Hadoop cluster. It's present on the top nav. It can also be used for seamlessly creating resources within CDAP, whether you want to create streams, artifacts, upload applications, and such. It's accessible across all of the CDAP extensions. When your Hadoop clusters have thousands of jobs or programs that are running and millions of data sets, it becomes extremely important to easily locate and interact or inspect them. So in order to make it simple for users, we have added cluster-wide spotlight search. It is similar in nature to the Mac Spotlight search. It's a selection-based search which indexes all of the entities in the clusters. You can use this to locate wide variety of entities on the cluster, and you can navigate quickly to any entity with just a question mark keyboard shortcut. So with thousands to millions of entities in your cluster, it becomes extremely important to have a consistent and concise view of the entity in order to improve the experience of inspecting and interacting with entities within the clusters. We moved from the default list views to the card view. Card view is available for all the entities that are deployed within the cluster. They provide right level of detail and convenience for operations or tasks that you want to perform on the entity. They easily communicate or quickly communicate status of the entity on the top screen itself, and they are optimized for the screen space. Essentially, information per pixel is being optimized. You will still have the option to switch to the list view if you like, but card view will be the default for any of the entities that are displayed within CDAP UI. Next one, for different types of entities that are performing different, have different common tasks, making them accessible at a single click enhances the user experience and productivity. For this reason, we introduced this concept of what we call fast actions on the card. They allow users to interact with entity directly from the card view. You don't need to have multiple click-throughs to essentially interact with those entities. And these actions are entity specific and can be configured. At the end of it, they reduce the number of clicks required for common operations on the entity and improves overall productivity when interacting with entities in the cluster. So our customers, when they use CDAP for building data applications or data lakes, they spend most of their time in CDAP console. They are either deploying new applications, managing or administrating existing applications. In order to administer or debug apps, it's important for a platform like CDAP to surface important infrastructural metrics in the UI. So we have made it easy and configurable as part of the new management interface that we have added. It provides intuitive wizards for administrating different components and resources. So every entity that you're trying to interact with, either creating or managing them, will be guided through. You'll be taken through a guided wizard to interact with them. We have also have tighter integrations and visibility into underlying infrastructural components. So you don't have to try to find out where a particular log files are. All that information for different components on which CDAP sits would be integrated and seamlessly accessible from the management UI. There are a lot more improvements that are being made to the CDAP from a user experience perspective. We just listed a the top level things, but you will also have enhanced detailed view for entity. The current CDAP UI entity view page will have more abilities in terms of creating dashboards and such. We are overall improving the Explore interface. Pretty much for any resources that you're trying to create would be powered by a guided wizard, which gives you much more better experience in terms of interacting with those entities. The one other major thing that we are adding is called contextual jump button on entities, which allows you to view or create or essentially interact with these entities within different extensions of CDAP. There are many other features like that that will be discussed in the next webinar when we have it. So going into the infrastructural features and capabilities that we are adding. One of the major things that we will be adding in CDAP 4 is the versioning support. So applications and programs can now be versioned. You can specify and have multiple versions of an application deployed and managed within CDAP. Newer version of the same applications or having multiple versions of active applications will be supported. There will be version-aware lifecycle operations, so you can start, stop, and manage the overall lifecycle of different applications and programs. For certain aspects of CDAP, like CDAP services, we'll have ability to control traffic with service routing configuration capability. So when you use CDAP services, you will be able to route traffic depending on your preference. So if you are upgrading to a new service, you will be able to move traffic from one version of the service to another seamlessly. One of the major things that has been a pain point generally when you use CDAP is just the management of the invalid transaction list pruning that exists within Tephra. So with CDAP 4, you will be able to have, you don't need to run periodic maintenance jobs to clean up the invalid list. This would be done automatically. In doing so, it improves the throughput of the transactional data operations, and it also reduces the network traffic as the amount of metadata for the transaction that is transferred between the client and the server gets reduced. This is being done in Apache Tephra, as you guys are aware. Recently, we moved Tephra into an Apache incubator project. So, and this will be done as part of the open source Apache Tephra process. So one of the things that is major to CDAP 4 is reliable messaging service. It will be internal to CDAP. To have the ability to publish and consume messages transactionally or non-transactionally. The system will support both of these capabilities in the system. When you look at what are the things that we'll be using this for, is for state changes, metadata updates, audit trails, and a few other updates that happen within the system. So this will reduce the dependency on Kafka. So you would still improving the overall performance of the system, as well as when you look at other things that we use Kafka for, or CDAP uses Kafka for, logs and metrics will continue to use Kafka in spite of reliable messaging service. We will not be moving those into the reliable messaging service. And standalone, you don't need to be running Kafka as a separate process. That again improves the experience overall. So one of the major things that we'll be focusing on, or we are focused on in CDAP 4 release, is all of the CDAP platform itself and CDAP applications will have the ability to withstand infrastructural outages. So there are different scenarios that have been worked upon. One is short-term outages, long-term outages, and transient outages. So and anytime when there are compatible rolling upgrades or downgrades or hardware failures or network fragmentation, CDAP as well as CDAP applications will continue to run in a degraded mode until the error is being resolved. So once the issue has been resolved, it will resume normal operations. So in this release, we We're also spending a lot of time on the dataset. We are essentially moving the dataset management piece into the central artifact management. Dataset currently had its own management, which had some of the drawbacks. So we are moving into a central artifact management, so you will be able to manage datasets as you manage plugins or any other application artifacts that exist in the system. The one major thing that we are doing is moving time to live, schema, and format into system properties that would allow us to perform better validation when a dataset is either being created or being modified. So we are adding consistent data lifecycle, which for creating, updating, and dropping datasets currently exists in the user's code. So we are moving some of the capabilities into the system space, allowing it to have better control and consistency across all of the different datasets that get created. We are also enhancing and simplifying the explore properties. We have many different places where you have to specify the explore properties, so that is being unified into a single place, and it's being simplified. So many of our users have complained about we don't have final control over transactions. With this release, they will be very happy to learn that we'll be providing final control over transactions that allows them to set timeouts, and the APIs would be reflecting the ability to do so. So the next part is more of self-service. We have categorized them as self-service, as this allows the users to be able to interact with the data or interact with applications seamlessly without having to work with an IT or an administrator and such. So one of the major features that is getting added as part of this is Cask Market. Cask Market will allow you to create an application and library ecosystem of pre-built solutions with reusable templates and plugins. So we are also going to make it available for anyone to create their own enterprise ecosystem of distributable solutions. So you can create your own market with a simple HTTP server and a market specification. And all of the CDAP system will integrate with the market that exists behind the firewall for this. So one of the things that was alpha in the last release 3.5, we are making it generally available. It's called Cask Preview, and it's an ability to functionally verify the pipeline as it's being built within Hydrator. This allows you to have faster iterations during the development of the pipeline. It also allows you to inspect the inputs and outputs of each individual nodes. So you can see once it passes through any transformation or your business logic, you will be able to inspect the data that is flowing in and the data that is flowing out, so you can have better control over validating the results that are being passed through. And you'll also, we are going to make it easier to be able to read the data from the actual sources even when you're running it in the preview mode. And in this release, it will be enabled by default. As in 3.5, you had to enable it to view this feature, but in CDAP 4, you'll be able to directly interact with it as it is enabled by default. Going to the next one, we are adding what is called a Cask Wrangler. Many of the users have provided us a lot of feedback in terms of usage of the schemas within Hydrators. At times it can be very hairy to manage large schemas within it when you really don't know how the data looks. So with CDAP 4, we are introducing what's called a Cask Wrangler. It improves the experience for creating schemas, facilitates easier importing of data. It will also provide minimal automatic detection of columns and types. And in the first release, this is the first release for the Cask Wrangler, so it will have basic data operations like dropping a column, merging a column, and such. So it will be an interface that will be made available as part of the through the Hydrator extension, and it will be available for managing the schemas when you don't have enough information about the data for which you're creating schemas. So that's for the self-service. Moving into data management and security. So as you guys know, Tracker provides ability to track your data, which also presents ability to view the audit logs. Now with CDAP 4, we will be adding improvements to the audit logs, which provides increased visibility into what actually changed, what metadata changed. We'll also have the ability to compare before and after the metadata change, be able to inspect that. And because we are adding versioning support, your audit logs will be able to provide visibility into what application and program versions are accessing that data set. With this, you will have a complete picture of your audit history, not only based on just the entities that programs are interacting with, but also including the versions of the programs that are interacting with those entities. So one of the major features that is being added as part of the tracker and data management is the data dictionary. So this particular capability will allow you to define different columns of this, the data set. So you will be able to provide name, type, description, sensitivity, and whether it's personally identifiable information. So you will be able to define your field names and such. Now, once you define a data dictionary, you will be able to use this within the hydrator. And if the compliance checks have been enabled, it will highlight to the user whether there is a violation of the types, there is violation of the name and such when the schemas are being created. So this will allow to have consistent schema across the board when you are building hydrator pipelines. And the compliance checks also will be able to combine when you are combining multiple schemas together or multiple data sets together. It will be able to highlight whether combining these two schemas together would violate compliance. So you also will have the ability to mark columns as sensitive automatically when new data sets are created. When the new when you're specifying the name for the column, you'll be able to see what the column is used for, the description for it, and be able to identify all other information. But columns will be automatically be marked when it is sensitive. So as you guys know, in CDAP 3.5, we introduced authorization across the board in CDAP. So we are adding a few more capabilities from an authorization perspective. Now you will have the ability to authorize access to the metadata, logs, and the metrics, CDAP 4. Now, one of the major things that we had overall planned out and we are executing in CDAP 4 release is securing all of the intercommunication between the subsystems of CDAP. So all of those will be moved over to SSL. In case you're running a secure cluster, you will be able to configure SSL for all of the communications that happens between the CDAP services and the system components that exist. So this makes the cluster to be much more reliable and secure as per your needs. So going to the distribution, cloud and integrations. So as you can see, with CDAP 4, we'll be supporting a wide variety of Hadoop distribution versions and cloud. As you see, like we support close to 6 versions of HTTP. We'll be supporting 6 versions of HTTP. 2.5 support will be there. Cloudera will be supporting a lot more versions. It will also have support for Cloudera 5.9. That is not released yet. And then we have support for different MapR versions in there. Now, from Azure, we currently CDAP 3.5 works on 3.4 release of Azure. So when 4 comes out, it will have the ability to work on CDAP, HD Insight 3.5. So on Azure HD Insight 3.5, will be able to run CDAP 4. For IBM IOP 4.1 and 4.2 are the versions that will be supported, and for Big Top, we'll have the 3 versions that are publicly available being supported. So one of the major things that we are doing as part of CDAP 4 is having the ability to support, be able to support CDAP in a distributed form on a AWS EMR. And due to the HBase version incompatibility, we were not able to support it previously. So with CDAP 4, we'll be able to support the EMR version 4.x. So with the public cloud, we'll have ability to create and CDAP clusters on Amazon EMR, and we'll be providing all the Amazon EMR scripts to be able to provision those on the EMR. We'll also be having a CDAP standalone AMI on Amazon. So if you guys are interested in spinning up a standalone, you would be able to use this AMI to spin a standalone in Amazon. As I said, we already have support for Azure. CDAP 4 will be making it available for Azure 3.5. It will be available in the marketplace, and we'll have support for IBM IOP as well. So when you look at from the plugins, Hydrators plugins perspective, we are adding a lot more machine learning plugins as part of it. So things like decision tree, logistic regression, linear regression, gradient descent trees, tokenizer, ngram, and k-means, and much more are being added as plugins to the Hydrator. So you'll be able to use these plugins to build models or score the model that you have built seamlessly. CDAP 4, you'll also be able to index data into Solar or Solar Cloud. We'll also have support for integration into Cloud Era Search. As many users have requested this, we'll also be supporting Solar Cloud as part of that. One of the things that is constantly being requested is ability to run any arbitrary code as part of the Hydrator pipelines. So we are adding what's called a run plugin that allows you to basically integrate any of the binaries that you have already built into the Hydrator pipeline. In this case, it will be reading it from the standard in and emitting it on standard out, which would then be captured and pushed into the downstream nodes in the DAG for the Hydrator. So this would be available in CDAP 4. As we are working with a lot of companies in health industry, so one of the major things that we are looking to add is the HL7 source. So with HL7 that supports like many different formats, you'll be able to select the formats that you want to, or different versions, sorry, and be able to ingest and process the data that is in HL7 format. As we are working with a lot more who use Windows, so we are now supporting the UNC source, which will allow you to ingest data from the Windows share. Now, we currently have ability to ingest data from relational database, right? So you can treat relational database as a source within Hydrator. But one of the things that we have identified is as you are working in a production environment or a mission critical environment, running MapReduce on these databases or warehouses can be very taxing in terms of CPUs. So we are adding a feature called bulk export and bulk import for Oracle, Netezza, and DB2 that will make it easy for which will essentially use the native tools to dump the data and load it into the cluster before it starts processing. And this will have the ability to jump to any box and be able to upload the data from there after running the export or import command, or vice versa. Plus, we have a lot more plugins that are coming in. We just didn't want to list all of them here, but a lot more plugins are being added to the Hydrator overall. I think, yeah, let's get into a very short demo. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time as this is a release in progress. So I'll just give you guys a quick overview of how CDAP looks and different interaction points that exist within it. Switching my window to Chrome. So here I have a standalone version of CDAP. As you can see, it has a splash screen now with an introduction video. So as soon as you download it, you'll have the ability to either jump into reading docs or get an introduction of the different concepts that exist within CDAP. Now, as you see, so previously with the card view, we can not only show here with the card view, we pretty much have a collection of all of the entities that are being shown here. In fact, the artifacts in previous releases were not accessible through UI, but they would be now available. You'll be able to filter them. You'll be able to search the cards. This is basically a complete view of all the entities that would exist within CDAP. As you guys can see, we have moved the selection of extension to the right-hand side. Now you'll have ability to modify or change this logo to your enterprise logo if you want, and then you can also change the color schema if need be. You'll be able to sort it on different parameters. Right now we just have ascending and descending lexicographically, but you'll also have ability to support by create date and activity date. The namespace, before it was just a drop-down list. Now you'll have the ability, depending on the permissions, you will have, the access permissions that you have, you will be able to create a namespace directly from the top nav. And the selection of the extensions has been moved to the right, so you will be easily be able to select any of these extensions that exist. And as we add more extensions, they would be listed in the same area here. Like I said, we also introduced the spotlight search. I can just type in the shortcut question mark, and I will be able to get to it, and I can do search. You can just completely navigate it through the keyboard. You don't have to touch the mouse to do that. And then you can jump to those individual entities directly from here. You can shift pages too also without buttons. So like I said, we added this plus button. Plus button exposes access to two things. One is for deploying pre-built solutions to the cluster. So this is coming from our public Cask Market. So we'll be adding a lot more use cases and solutions and pipelines and plugins to this. By doing so, one of the things that we are doing is reducing the size of the standalone artifact. It's basically reducing the size dramatically, as these will be loaded on demand if need be. So the use case section allows you to define more complete use cases. So we'll be adding a lot more use cases into the mix. We are also working with some of our partners to basically integrate their solutions into here. It's because this is open source, people can contribute their solutions into the Cask Market. We'll have a process that'll allow you to submit these applications into the Cask Market or solutions into the Cask Market. Each of these use cases can be a multi-step process. So you can, when you want to do a kind of omnichannel analytics on top of the omnichannel data that you are collecting, you can easily build a pipeline. You can define different steps in the Cask Market as what needs to be done. Here, there are 5 steps I would have to take in order to be able to run the pipeline. I would have to create a stream, upload a sample data. This is just showing as an example, but once the stream is created, you can essentially ingest the data using either the CDAP APIs or you can use the command line to upload data to this. So the 5 steps will allow you to completely build an end-to-end pipeline, and you can deploy this and be able to interact with it. This is a pre-built solution that is made available. You can also include like any of the machine learning stuff. This is the six-step process that does the modeling and scoring. These will be fully built solutions that you can deploy onto the cluster. But if you want to have starting points, we also provide things like pipelines, which allow you to parse CSV data. So these are pipelines that would basically be deployed into draft mode into Hydrator, and you can essentially configure them as per your needs before deploying into them in CDAP applications. You'll also be able to provide sample data. So these will be sample data that you can expose to your users so that they can try out if, their pipelines whenever they need. One major thing that we have done is generally we have seen either on the mailing list or just from an overall support perspective. So how you interact with database through the JDBC driver was kind of difficult just because there was no nice, better interface to simplify that. So with CDAP Market, what we have done is all of these, the JDBC drivers that you are looking to use to interact with the database in the Hydrator, you'll have a step-by-step process to be able to install them. So if I look at like installing Oracle driver in here, I will have a set of instructions, and this is just from a legality perspective. We cannot be hosting these artifacts, so you would have to go to those individual sites and accept the license agreement, and then upload it to CDAP when you want to interact with these databases. So these configurations will make it extremely easy to configure the JDBC drivers when you deploy it into your cluster. Similarly, you will have a lot more categories in terms of examples and all that will help you get started easily on CDAP. Now, you can switch from the market, which provides you predefined solutions, to the resource center that allows you to create these. So if I want to create a stream, I can go into a stream and it'll take me through a guided process to set up a stream correctly. So now you will always be taken through a guided process to enable or interact with different resources that exist within your cluster. So let me go ahead and create a stream, and let's say this is demo. All these. So I can from here jump to a Hydrator view. I can switch between batch and real time. So these are all the entities that have to be created, that can be created, it's all centralized in one place. This global nav is available across CDAP as well as CDAP extensions, so it makes it extremely easy not to lose context if you need something else to be created within CDAP. You can just click on the plus button. Either you can go in and add a predefined solution, or you can essentially create using the resource center. Okay, so let's see. One other thing, we are trying to make everything configurable in terms of the URLs are being been done in such a way that you can pass along this information to your colleagues. So whenever they bring up the CDAP instance, all that information will be exactly the way the other person is looking at. So with that, I think that's all I had to show today. So with that, we'll go ahead and take some questions. We'll have time for some questions now.
Great, thanks, Nitin. Yes, we still have about 15 minutes, so plenty of time for questions. For those on the call, if you have any questions, please fill out the Q&A box on the right-hand side of your GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll get to them as quickly as we can. So the first question is kind of a long one, actually. So data dictionaries are maintained in both CDAP and outside CDAP with an overlapping but not identical content. Is there a capability to export the CDAP data dictionary? And can the CDAP data dictionary be populated from an external data dictionary, i.e. import?
So in the first, the data dictionary This is the first release of data dictionary. So first will be supporting the ability to add your own data dictionary through Tracker, because that's where all of the data and the metadata exists. That will be available to all of the applications that will be running within CDAP. And as we move forward, we'll be integrating all of those into one central place. You will, right now with CDAP 4, you'll not have the ability to export, but we are adding that in the upcoming, the following releases, the ability to export, and import will be there, but export would not be there at this point in time.
Okay, thanks. The next question is, can you describe the Elasticsearch plugins?
Can you describe the Elasticsearch plugins? Okay. So the question is, can you describe Elasticsearch plugins? So Elasticsearch plugins essentially are, this already exists in the current version of Hydrator. The Elasticsearch plugins allow you to, they can be used as a sink or a source. So when they are used as a sink, you can create all of the facets and the schemas that are required to be indexed, and you can essentially process have a pipeline that processes the data and ingests into it. It can be done both in real time and batch, as far as I remember. But when you ask to describe more, is there anything specific being looked for? Sure.
No, sorry, Nitin, that's all I have.
Okay.
So there's another question, though, about plugins. So the next one is, do you have a Kinesis Amazon plugin?
Oh, we'll be adding Kinesis Amazon plugin as part of CDAP 4. So you will be able to interact with Amazon Kinesis in real time. So it will act as a source as well as a sink for the real-time pipelines.
Great. Okay, a couple of questions are about the Cask Market. The first one is, what kind of things can be published into the Cask Market?
So, good question. Pretty much everything that CDAP interacts with, whether it's an artifact, whether it's an application, a pipeline. We'll also be adding supports for predefined dashboards as part of it, plugins, and in fact, you can have data packs too if need be. In the example that I showed, all of these can be added to the Cask Market. Any artifact.
Okay. The other question is, will it be possible to have a private or internal-only market for our company?
Yes, like I said, so you can create your own. So what we will be doing is we'll be exposing the market specification. It's a JSON spec, and then you basically, whenever you put in any kind of an asset into the market, just you have to follow the spec, and just in front of it have an HTTP server. Can be anything, whatever you guys use in your enterprise. You can just front it with that, and then provide the path to CDAP to interact with it. So with that, you will be able to have your own behind the firewall Cask Market.
Great, thanks, Nitin. The next question is about Cask Wrangler. When would I use Cask Wrangler, and when would I use a standalone wrangling tool?
Can you come again, Andrew, please?
Oh, sure. It says, when would I use Cask Wrangler, and when would I use a standalone wrangling tool?
So it's a good question. So like I said, when you are working within Hydrator, and when you are trying to figure out the schema for the data that you are trying to ingest or process, it's a very laborious process right now, because you have to first identify the fields and then define the types and all those things. When you have large fields, so for example, from an Omniture feed has close to 278 fields in them. So it makes it extremely difficult when you are in a Hydrator to define all of the schema and the fields for that particular input data. So this is very specific to the hydrator to begin with, and the whole idea there is we want to simplify the whole process of creating the schemas within hydrator. So what would end up happening is if you when you're in hydrator, instead of going and figuring out all by yourself, you will basically drop in a sample data into the Wrangler, and you will be able to it automatically identifies the columns and types, and you can essentially delete a column, merge two columns, and do such simple operations, and which automatically helps you define the schema in there. So that's the first in this release. That's what we are starting with. Now, if you have already an existing Wrangler that you're running, you are basically using that to essentially identify a lot of things that I just talked about, plus you're doing a lot more with it, right? Now, the whole point that we are actually not competing with all of the wrangling tools that exist within the ecosystem, like Trifacta and such. We are just trying to simplify the process of adding schemas within Hydrator to start with, and then it will be available in CDAP and such for data sets. But when you're interacting with the existing tools, there is no way right now to translate what you have done there into Hydrator, but we would love to talk to you guys to see what are the kinds of tools and what are the kinds of things you're doing that we can essentially take into account in the next releases.
Okay, thanks. There's two questions here that I'll kind of combine and ask you to answer together. One is, when is the release date for CDAP 4? And the other is, can I try out CDAP 4, and is there a download for the preview?
Okay, so the first question, when is the release for CDAP 4? So we have currently it's currently planned for Q4 of 2016, and the reason is that we got some late requirements that we would like to address it in this release. So we are currently figuring out what are the things that we can do. So I would say by the end of this year, my guess is like mid-December is when this release would happen. But it's yet to be seen. And the second question was, can I try out CDAP Preview? Of course you can. So if you go to the Cask downloads, you'll be able to download the CDAP 4 preview from our website. It's a slightly older version of what I'm actually currently showing you guys, but you will be able to interact with it and see the kinds of capabilities that are being made available as part of that.
Great, thanks, Nitin. Looks like one last question, unless somebody has a question they haven't typed in. So just a quick prod to please type in your question if you have any more. The last question here is, will I be able to upgrade to CDAP 4 from previous releases?
Oh, that's a very good question. So as I said, we are making some, so first of all, it's a major release, and major release, there will be incompatibilities, and we are for sure there will be incompatibilities, mostly from a dataset perspective, because the datasets are being modified in the core. So it'll be incompatible, but we'll be providing you guys an upgrade tool. But in any case, you might have to recompile datasets and applications and programs when you migrate to CDAP 4.
Thanks, Nitin. So, well, you have one more question here. Gerald asked if we have any additional questions. Yes, please follow up with me. You can. My email address is going to be listed in this webinar as well as the follow-up email. So that's about it. It looks like we've answered all the questions, Nitin. Do you have anything else before we wrap up?
No, Andrew.
Okay. Good. Well, thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure being with you. Thank you, Nitin, and thanks everyone for attending today's webinar, What's New in CDAP 4. As I said, if you have any additional questions, you can email me or you can email the info@cask.co. Following this webinar, everyone who attended will receive a link to view a recording of today's webinar, as well as links to additional content, including data sheets for CDAP and at the Hydrator and Tracker extensions, a CDAP 101 guide, and a Hydrator white paper. On behalf of Cask and our presenter, thank you for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.